Welcome to A Dose of Feeling. I'm Mushka, just a real human navigating the beautiful chaos of life. This podcast is about keeping it real, sharing my highs, lows, and the lessons that shaped me. It's a mix of stories, inspiration, and honest conversations, like chatting with a friend who just gets it. So get comfy and let's dive into this journey together. Let's feel it all. Hi, fellow feelers. Welcome back to another episode. I'm really excited for today's conversation with our former couples therapist and a dear, dear mentor and influential person in my life. So enjoy. Let me know your thoughts and thank you for being here. Hi.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm well. How are you? So good to see you.
Good. You too. Thank you for doing this for me. It's so special
100%.
to
I was
meet
so
you.
excited when I listened to some of your recordings and what you're sharing with everyone in terms of your journey. I'm like very spiritual and I think it's healing. It's lovely.
Thank you. I know. I mean, being able to be at this place where I can talk so much about my relationship, even and like addiction. When we first met, I would never, I didn't want a soul to know that this was my life. And,
Oh my gosh.
and just for me to be in a place, and especially I'm amazed even at myself that I'm at this place. But
Yes.
yeah, I
Well,
wouldn't have
I
changed.
I I mean, the journey, for many of us, and I just know when I met the two of you, it just feels like your world's falling apart, and it'll never, and it goes on for a long time. It's not
Mhm.
like one and done. It's a whole new pathway to life, or it's not.
Yeah. Well, and especially when you're in it, right? You feel like it'll never end. And
Right.
now when I look back, I'm like, oh, okay, that was just like a small part of my life. But when I was in it, it felt like there's no way we would ever get out of this. It's
Yes. Yeah.
intense.
And it
Yeah.
just feels like it's so painful. It's like at the end of your life, you say, what did I go through? I mean, like what were the lessons and what did I go through? Like that would be the very first thing that would probably pop in your head. Like that was so hard.
Yeah. Yeah. That was it. Not only was it hard, but I would say that it created like a new trajectory for my life. If I never had that, then yeah, there would be hard things, but life would still be the way that it was with
Correct.
hard things. This kind of took everything that I had and was like, we're going this way now. And it brought, before that, I wasn't spiritual. I didn't really look at myself. I didn't do a lot of like, I was in the mental health field. I vaguely
Right.
knew addiction, but I wasn't on this like awareness of the work I had to do or how to work more on our relationship. So this really opened up a whole new world for us where it was, and even for me, is what is spirituality? What is personal development? What is healing? Then all these childhood wounds came up that I never looked at. So
Right.
it's like a whole new path that now this is my way of life. And it
It's
was
so
something.
fascinating, isn't it? How you can be, like spiritual or religious or
Mhm.
following a path and you believe like what you've learned and what you've known, and then you're hit with this tsunami or crisis, because that's what it's like when there's an active addiction, whatever that might be. It's like your world is in this kind of like strange place. It's not feeling good. It's messy, it's painful. And then when the reality hits, at least, for couples in their recovery together, that kind of uh pain, actually, that's why people come to therapy. It's not because they're feeling great, right?
Yeah.
Yay, I'm feeling great, I want to see it there. It's because, and and for a person like you, because there's a lot of people out there that they're a very, very private, and then this hits you, and what do you do? Unless you get guidance from someone who has information about how to find a healing pathway, you can I mean we or you cannot do it alone, right? So it was kind of like twice. It's even harder for someone. Your husband, he's out there. He's a different. He's more interpersonal. Not that you're not. You have a different personality. So I really acknowledge you, and you're teaching other people who are very private, right? Like maybe your husband needed to, because that's his path. But you found a very small group of safe women. You trusted, me, which was wonderful. And you have to sense that not all therapists are a good fit either. Doesn't mean they're bad, but they've got to have that information that you trust, that they're going to take you out of this place and find someplace better, which is, in a way, when I was in my 20s, I found a person that took me, which is why I did and was very comfortable in dealing with all variety of addictions, because not everybody is that comfortable dealing with it. So I believed it, I knew it, I did the work myself. And then you're a very private person. You not only you really embraced it, but cautiously. You didn't go for everything. You were like, and I really, I just honor that for you taking care of yourself. Like, I will do it my way. But exploring recovery or the 12 steps or your own path and what's right for you. I really appreciated your reconciling with yourself. What works for me as a woman, dealing with your husband stuff? I'm like, she's amazing.
Thank you, Rita. Thank you. Yeah, what you said, everyone's journey is so unique, everyone's situation is so unique that what works for one person doesn't work for another. What worked for Mendy, the way that he was getting his help and his support and doing things, I always didn't even like that. And I was just like, okay, I'm going to do my thing, you do yours. I was supportive most of the time, but that wouldn't work for me. And even, I would say maybe last year, probably, he was like, I'm speaking out about these things. So Mushka, I think maybe you should also, because if you want to feel comfortable with what I'm saying, maybe you say things too. And I wasn't ready. I was like, I know it'll come when it comes. And I wanted it to feel right. I wanted to be confident doing it, not because I had to, or I had to tell people for the sake of airing my dirty laundry. No, I want it to be meaningful and intentional. And in this podcast, I get feedback from women because there are so many people like me, and there's in the community, the Jewish, the Orthodox community, the stigma, the shame, the secrecy.
Yes. And it's a small community.
Right. You talk, everyone knows, it's small and it's tight and people talk. And so to hear someone who does something that's maybe a little bit out of the box, but can help another person is talked about.
Amazing. Amazing. And I'm just curious, what was in the beginning, what was the very first thing that you took? I believe seeing a therapist at couples, but you're kind of like, what else am I going to do? But for your own, what did you start to do that was a bit of a risk, and how did you navigate that given all the trauma around you and your relationship?
Yeah.
Like the steps, for someone, I'm thinking.
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing, that it sounds simple, but for me, I was a very private person and I was very scared about judgment or people finding out. It was going to a 12-step meeting, because when Mendy never gave me a discovery disclosure. It was me. I found everything. I heard everything myself, and I went to him and said, I found out this and this. First he told me about his addiction. I didn't realize how bad it was.
Right.
until I discovered things. And then I felt like I was drowning, and I'm like, I need something. What do I do? And he suggested, well, I know my friend's wife goes to something. Would you go? And he gave me her number, and I was very, very scared because who will I see there? What do I
Yes.
have to tell them? Will they know me? Will there be other Jews? Will there be other Orthodox women? Which happened
Right.
to be, yes, a lot. And
Right. Right.
it was very scary for me to take that first step, but that was the step that changed everything for me because I couldn't do it alone. I had a therapist. I started individual therapy, but to be in a room with other women who are going through the exact same thing at the
Right.
exact same time felt like everything to me. It felt like everything I needed, um,
So
and it
it
was
gave
scary.
you a lot just to make that
Yeah,
call, I'm sure.
yeah.
Safety. It created safety enough to gut to a meeting with
Yeah.
her, I
Yeah.
guess.
So the safety part was that I'm not alone. And as scary as this is, I don't have to do this alone. I'm hyper independent, so I do a lot of
Yes,
things on my own.
I know.
And for this, I can't do this one on my own. I can't live like this.
Right.
And so that was like a lifeline of safety. I was like, okay, there's one person. Let me hold on to her, and I'll listen to whatever she says next. And she said, let's go to a meeting. And so like I couldn't say no. It wasn't doing any harm. I didn't
Right.
know what good it had at the beginning. I just knew that the anonymity. I was sitting in a room full of women. They couldn't share about me. And that really helped, again, another level of safety that we don't talk about this outside of here. And
Can you trust that 100%?
well, what I used to tell myself was that if they ever said anything about me, I would have leverage. I would say, then I would have what to say about them. And
Right.
thankfully, it's never come to that. And I
Good.
can't imagine that it would because probably everyone's thinking the same thing.
So, um, I'm thinking, when did you feel safe enough? Because it's all about, I'm just thinking safety for
Yeah,
you. Like it
safety.
had to be like to get a sponsor and or to talk in a meeting. And was your share cautiously sharing, but more sharing personally? Like how did it work for you?
I don't think about the details, but wow, those details are
Yeah.
so powerful. I don't think I shared the first meeting. I think I was just maybe crying
Yes.
because I didn't know. Also I like to make sure I'm doing things right and be the good girl. How do I sit? What do I say? So I'm pretty sure I just observed. I remember I cried a lot, so I probably just cried and I didn't say anything. But then the second time I said everything. I feel like it
So it
was
had to feel safe.
it felt
You
safe.
had,
Yeah,
were there a lot of women in the group? I mean, in that meeting?
8 to 10,
Okay, it
8 to
wasn't like
12.
50.
Yeah, no, no.
Okay.
And I would say that I was like at a breaking point because it had accumulated even before I started going to the meetings. I knew about the addiction for a couple months before I had this big
Okay. Right.
discovery. And so it was just like an accumulation of like stress and worry and
Right.
fear and decisions.
Oh,
So by the time, yeah, it was just weighing on me. So I think by the time I had like permission, like, okay, Mushka, it's safe for you to talk. You're at your second meeting. Let's talk. I said everything and I was crying and I was a mess, but it felt it was such a relief. And
wow.
nobody said anything. They just listened to me, and said, thank you for sharing. And that was all I needed. That was enough.
So they didn't like feel sorry for you. They didn't make a big deal. They're like, yeah, yeah. All right, we're glad you shared. Let's move on.
Nothing. Yeah. Thank you. Just thank you for
Yeah,
sharing.
thank you. And it was
Yeah,
healing for you to
it
have a
was.
safe place that people, if you had told another group of women that had never experienced this, they wouldn't even know what to do.
No,
That's
no.
why your caution and environment about sharing personal information is really important. Because if you talk to like a girlfriend who just didn't know, she would
She'd
have a
tell me to
different
leave him.
response.
Yeah, she'd
Right,
say, "Just leave him." Yeah,
yeah, she'd say, "It's over," and you're like, no, I hear there's more to this."
yeah, yeah. And I
Fabulous.
wanted to, I
Right, you
like
loved
to
him.
try, I like to keep I'm determined, I wanna see, I want to it was bad, but it wasn't maybe that bad, and I'm sure there's worse out there, and let me keep going, and he was trying. He
And
was
he was trying. I was
Yeah.
just thinking, most, couples, if they come in, let's say it's the guy who's, like, acting out,
Mhm.
and she's saying, um, "This is it. I'm over. I'm never gonna do it again." Uh, and I and maybe, of course, you would say, "Let's see if we can use this as a platform for change and even growing stronger together." And you saw that Mindy was, your partner was making changes.
Yeah.
And that, oh, this was my point. So most women would come in and say, "Well, he's got to change. He's got to change. He's got to change." And they'll cross their arms and go,
Mhm.
"Okay, when are you going to change? Because I'm okay."
Mhm.
And at like what point did you realize there were things that you could benefit from if he if he was going to change and grow, because when you change you grow, that there were areas that would benefit you with your own growth? Like,
Mhm.
was that a light bulb?
Yeah, it was when I went first to the meetings, and it's okay. I had some part in where my life is at this point. I didn't cause it. I didn't cause the addiction. I didn't, it's not my fault. I can't
Right.
change or whatever. But I did have some part in me at 27 years old being married to someone who was in the midst of a really deep addiction and thinking that my life was okay up until this point, then going and reading and hearing and other people's stories and the work that they had been doing, it made me realize, okay, there's something I need to be doing in this as well. Because if I continue however I've been continuing, will that mean that I'm gonna be stuck in like really difficult situations for the rest of my life? Because this didn't work out so well. So that's
Right.
when I dived deep into like, I did step work, I got a sponsor, I started buying random books on like
Sure.
healing, and one book took me to the next book, to the next book. I started doing inner child work.
So it opened up this whole relationship with yourself.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and I know a lot of people who aren't in recovery and say the husbands struggle with addiction and they don't go to recovery, but they just start that route. They're like, oh, let me see what I can do because there's a lot of healing, there's a lot of trauma. Oh, I think one of the first books I got was like a betrayal trauma book, and that
Right.
was really healing for me because it's not me. I can't take it personally, but there
Right.
is work that I need to do to heal from what was happening.
Yes.
So those types of things that you don't necessarily need the 12 steps
Right.
to start that. But for me, I don't think I would have looked at anything if not for the 12 steps. That was the stepping stone.
And the 12 steps have I think, strong spiritual,
Mhm.
uh, um, focus. But what I like about it is it's not, I don't mean to use the word generic, but I
Mhm.
do mean, but it's sort of like so spiritually personal that
Mhm.
instead of the religion out here that we grew up with, it's your own personal, I don't want to use the word religion, connection with like God, universe, like
Yeah.
it's much bigger than the
Mhm.
kind of limitations that maybe religion has. Would you think
Yeah.
that? Do you think that?
Yeah, and coming from an ultra-orthodox, ultra-religious
Yes.
upbringing, I can tell you that I didn't really know what God was until I found my own higher power, my own God. If I want to compare, I didn't know what God meant, what
Yes.
trusting, believing a higher power. I just knew, like, okay, you're Jewish, there's a God, you
Yeah.
this, you pray,
And a
that
lot of
kind of
rules and punishment.
yes. And then to discover that there's like a higher power that I can personally connect to and choose and consciously bring into my life, I hadn't had that. And yeah, and now like I mean I find that I am deeply spiritual and I'm deeply connected to God, and it has nothing to do with Judaism. You know, I'm yeah, I love being Jewish and Orthodox and connecting to that, but the God, spirituality and Judaism isn't the same for me. They're two different things.
So I'm just curious, from the Orthodox world that you and your husband were in, when I thought that you two were very committed, as you say, to a path for yourselves and your children. But I I always thought, oh, they're finding their own way in different, maybe not exactly the rules.
That still is to have to do it like that. And I mean, we are different. We don't fit into a box, and
And
we're
you're
just
okay.
doing our thing. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
okay with it. Yeah, I'm okay.
you're okay with your way and your relational way of moving and still being part of the community, with navigating the judgment
Hmm.
about not doing it exactly the way in like an old school, with like
Yeah,
tradition, really well, you had your own way anyway, but I know there's different levels
yeah.
of
Like
Orthodox
rigidity.
Judaism.
Yeah. Yeah, and the rigidity. You know, I this is only recent. I would not be okay with this today, but I mean back then, but today, you know, I also know that everyone is going through their own thing. Some people just have to hide it more, and I feel for that because I know what that was like, you know, when we really had to figure out where we belonged and we questioned and we weren't
Right.
sure would we even
And then your
fit in anywhere.
families, and you're close to, I always thought you're pretty close to everybody, but you're still
Yeah,
finding your own way, and they may not agree with it.
yeah,
Buddy, I mean, that's another
exactly.
thing. Like, you could
Exactly.
be open, but then it, yeah, it might be, yeah, I think using caution,
Hmm.
and you being all like being authentic, but transparent, and in your own like experience, and with people you can be transparent with.
Yeah.
But not
Yeah.
everybody can handle it,
Right.
right?
No,
Or no,
everyone
they
can
don't
have
even
it.
know what to do with that.
Mhm. Yeah. And that's also, you know, I want people to see that if you're feeling a certain way, like it's okay. You know, I feel like in many ways, and maybe I think you've said this, you know, like we were guinea pigs for a lot of things. The family stuff and the community
Yes.
and the relationship.
Like, because
Yeah.
you are like embracing, there's a lot of change happening in the world, good and bad and all that, but there is a movement, and
Mm-hmm.
you are part of that, spearheading that. I think you and your husband.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully people will see that and be inspired by that. Like it can be scary when you're first or when you're the only one.
And I
Mhm.
know that when your husband was exploring different avenues of different ways of his own healing path, you were very cautious. You're like, you didn't just go with it. And I just, I appreciated that. It's because I wasn't sure either. I'm like,
Yeah.
well, let's see. I mean, I don't know either.
Yeah.
I hadn't experienced some of his direction, but I, I, I thought, you know what it is? When your heart is in the right place, even though
Hmm.
it might not be researched and explored, I'm like, they're his heart and her heart, they're in the right place. And it seems like it's new to me too, the path
Hmm.
you two chose with different things.
I know. Well, for a while I was hesitant because I'm like, if it ain't broke, why fix it? You know, I'm like,
I
this
like
is
that.
working very well for us.
That's what
Let's,
I
you
was
know.
thinking.
And then, you know, now, you know, I have to trust the process, and a few times I had to, you know, I told you so and things like that. But that, you know, it's how you know, it's a feeling. You know, you feel
Yeah.
like something's right, you take that avenue, and it's okay to say, okay, that's not right for me. I'll come back here, and I at a certain point, maybe like 2 years ago, I didn't feel like I needed the 12-step meetings as much. And I still have my group of friends and,
Right.
the women that I know, but I used to go religiously.
Well, you
It was,
needed it.
I
You
needed
needed
it.
the
Yeah.
shift, and it
Yeah.
gave you that shift.
Yeah. And so now if if something comes up addiction related and, I'll reach out to a friend. Like I don't necessarily run back to a meeting because I don't feel like for today it gives me the same as what I needed back then. And
Yes.
it evolves what you need and what you feel is right as time goes on. And
And you've
so,
integrated the 12 steps. I'm sure you
mhm,
practice,
yeah.
I would imagine that your practice share with another person, pray every day, like
Mhm,
meditation, like there are
yeah.
things, admit when you're wrong promptly, like
Mhm,
make amends. You've already done your 4th step. So it's a way of life that you've integrated, and then not that you've got it down, but you've got the tools that when things come up, you can just, oh, I think I'll share. Oh, I think I need a little more. Maybe I'll go to a meeting. I haven't been to one. I think it would ground me a little bit more. But
yeah.
one of your, I think I'm not sure if I heard in the podcast, but I was thinking about something Mindy had done. He started exploring something that didn't feel right at all to you.
Yep.
It was pot or something like that. Maybe, I don't know.
Oh,
And
yeah, there was a time where he was smoking a lot of marijuana and
yes,
I said,
yes.
no, like we're
How
not
did
doing
you
that.
know that that wasn't right for you? Like for you, or for him, or for you, or for your relationship?
I had known him in the lens of addiction enough
Yes.
to know that from the lens of like there's a tendency to become addicted to something,
Okay.
not healthy, and it feels like this is going down that path. I really don't want it. But now he's like, I can't believe I ever thought that I could be doing that. Like it was the best thing you ever did to put your foot down.
Did he say that? So he now sees,
Yeah.
or then when he admitted it, that that was harmful to him to take.
Because he knew now I mean, back then, I don't think he knew where it could go, but now he knows that it was heading down the road of numbing for into an addiction for numbing
Yes.
what he was feeling.
So
Yeah.
if I'm just throwing, I'm just thinking,
Yeah.
because you two are so good and respectful of each other's opinion, maybe not immediately, but you, he takes in what you're what you're concerned about, even though he may not change it immediately, maybe won't change it all at all, but at least in that area he did.
Yeah.
But for those people, men and women who like, how would you handle it if he continued to smoke?
Well, I did give him an ultimatum. I
Oh,
said,
okay. Well, this is good for people to know.
I did say with that one, I don't know what made him think to tell me, but it was great that he told me. And I said, if you go, I don't want you to come back. And I didn't know what I was saying, but he said, okay. And then he left the house. I thought he would either go and get it or that he would go back to acting out or do something terrible. But I just was like, this is what I believe, and this is where I'm putting my foot down. And he came back, an hour later or so. He said, I drove around, I had a thought about it, and you're right, I'm not going to do it.
So let me
Yeah.
ask you, he
Yeah.
must have, you're a strong woman, and I don't think you say things that you don't mean.
I don't say things like that often. I never did.
Yeah,
And so
I know.
that was, yeah, that
You were
was a really big
serious.
deal. Yeah, I was serious.
Just like
Um,
you were serious. I don't think it was so extreme what she did when
when I locked him out,
I was like, I thought, I thought until he gets it together, he's
yeah,
acting like a little scary. And
yeah.
so I think it was such great self-care.
I felt bad, but yeah,
But
in
I
the
think,
moment, I thought it was great. But
right.
yeah,
Well, maybe later, but I do think when you hold, not that everybody should do that, but when someone's behaving in a way that, because the children were there and
yeah,
they were a little bit scared because he was
Mhm.
really loud and a little bit stomping around, or,
Yeah.
in that place. You're like, you really just shut the door and said, don't come in until you like calm yourself down. But
Yeah.
I think those things, in terms of, this was less about him and more about keeping your home safe
Yeah.
and taking care of you. And even though you didn't want to do that because you love him,
Mhm.
but it's that part of him. And it's that part of him that's the disease that you said. It's the part of him that lost his temper that you said, that part doesn't need to come back. I love you. I don't love the addiction. I
Yeah.
love you. So you're really clear when he starts to when that addictive personality starts to get too strong, you're like,
Mhm. No, yeah, that I know. And I feel like it was again a buildup of, when we were at the beginning of addiction and really deep in addiction, I
Right.
never once threatened to leave. I never,
No,
sometimes I would
no, you
say like,
never
oh,
did.
if it's really bad, I don't know if I can handle this. But I never said, oh, if you act out again, you can't come back in, or don't come
No,
home
you
if you
didn't.
get. I never did that. So I feel like in a way it was a buildup of me trying to wait for when to know when it was right to say something like that. And it wasn't about him, because at the end of the day, when he was in the midst of the addiction, he was still working on himself. He was still going to meetings, he
Right,
was still
right.
working really hard. So I could never say, oh, don't come back, because it's not affecting me. I mean, it is, but I have, you still have what to prove, you're still working on it. But something like that card, you're telling me you're going to do something that really affects me and the family. And
Right,
I feel like
because
it was a buildup of like waiting for the right moment to know the difference between like anger and just,
yes,
the facts. Like, I can't do this.
right. Interesting. And you had the conviction. It wasn't like you just throw these thoughts out. You really weigh it out. You probably talk. I don't know if you talked to
Yeah,
anybody about it, but maybe you did.
yeah.
And one thing I thought was powerful, which created safety for him to talk about his temptations. And
Mhm,
like through those years that I saw
mhm,
the two of you,
yeah,
I was really impressed with your willingness and managing your own reactivity when he would kind of disclose some new information or whatever that would be like, you didn't like it, but you created the space for him to talk about it
yeah.
so that he didn't have this shame or this temptation by himself. That he sort of said, this is what I'm going through. I know it's not an attractive thing. It's in my head. And you held it with him. You were, you thought about it, and you worked together to figure it out. But what you didn't do, I have to say, was hugely powerful after the first like few months, which is you're like, ah!
Yeah,
But you never did that. But most women would be like, oh my God, I can't believe, because they keep coming out with more information. It's not the first session that it's especially with these particular addictions. It's like it takes 6 months to even a year to come out with all that they've been dealing with,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And you created, and I think having your own therapist working with me, you were able to create a safe space, because the main reason the partner does not disclose whatever their addiction is they're afraid they're going to be slammed, or not that you're not going to like it and you're going to
mhm,
deal with it, but it's like, okay, you've shared it, I'll deal with all the reaction myself, I'll come back and tell you I don't like it. I'm not going to push you away by
mhm,
saying you're an idiot, and you're not going to do that. You're going to hold it, listen, process it, talk about it in meetings, share about it, let him know, and then let him know in a way he can hear it. It's either unacceptable, I'm not okay with it. This, what do you, the main, what are you going to do with it? I'll deal with my feelings, but what are
mhm,
you going to do? You were powerful with that.
Thank you. Yeah, I know that I understood the shame and
Yes.
the shame with the secrecy and
Right.
the loop. And so if he couldn't feel safe to talk about it in therapy, he would never feel safe to talk about it with me out of therapy.
Right.
And we would just be stuck in this loop. And I knew that it wasn't about me. When I was sitting there next to him,
Good.
not a lot of it was about me. It was about him and his all the issues and everything that had led to that place. And so I held my ground, knowing that like kind of and also detaching him as a husband and as a person from the addiction and the things he was saying and
Right.
thinking. And whatever came up I had to deal with later. Yeah,
Yeah.
a few weeks ago, something came up, like I don't know how it happened, but now when we talk about addiction, we can talk, we can laugh about certain
Right.
things, but
Right.
sometimes something will come up that like stings a little, and
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
to do something. But something came up, a detail about one of the things that he did that I never knew about, and
Okay.
I was just shocked
Wow.
that it happened, but also that I never knew about it. In a way, it felt like I had to like quickly work on like
Right.
processing that and like going through. It was like it felt like a disclosure in a way, a new disclosure, because I knew
Wow.
everything. But the fact that I didn't know this, I was like shocked and it stung. But then again, it was like, okay, this is you. This was like 10, whatever, 8 years ago.
Right.
Okay, what do I have to do? What did I used to do? Let me do that now. And I was able to do that, and I'm okay. But
Wow. So you have the tools, but it's not, and I think that's true. Like something might come up for him that he had forgotten about or maybe didn't disclose at that time, or it just triggered him again or whatever it was. And it's not like, I don't know that we're ever 100% out of the woods. you know it's such a process that, and the truth is, you know it's it's about dealing it with the relationship, your partner, but it never goes away 100%. It's just managed. Right?
mhm,
It's not, it's like it might creep up with other things, but if you're 10 steps ahead of it, you're still managing what's behind you, right? You're still
yeah,
like managing. Like
mhm,
it's not like things you're going to be acting out. You just have to be very proactive, and there's you create a sort of a peaceful environment,
mhm,
right? But you
yeah,
still have to be proactive. It's not like, ah, I'm free. I don't ever
yeah,
have to, let's hope it doesn't have to happen again. It could, but you have the tools now.
right.
And
And it can also manifest in other ways. Like it may not have been this, oh, I get nervous. Maybe it might become an addiction, and like let's
yes,
look at this pattern. Even if it's like watching movies in bed at night. Why are you doing this every single night? Are you numbing something? Let's look at that. And it doesn't necessarily have to manifest as like the way that it once did, but
right.
underlying thing can keep coming up.
100%. And I'm glad you're saying that. It's not, once again, it's not like, okay, generally we're doing well, and as long as I see there's a frame of mind, but it's easy to slip back into old seductive patterns. You get tired, especially when you're tired or you
Mhm.
haven't like taken care of yourself in a
Yeah,
while, or there's so many stressors.
yeah. It feels familiar. You go back to those places that keep you safe,
Right.
comfy.
Triggers, right.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that the first call to someone making that hard call
Mhm.
is the first step to changing your life.
Yeah.
To the person that might be able to help you or take you to a meeting.
Mhm. Yeah. And that is also because you're getting out of this chaos. It's the first step you take out of the chaos.
Right,
Yeah.
right, and you're not alone, I guess,
Mhm.
in it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Go
What
ahead.
would you say is you see a lot of Jewish or Orthodox
Yes.
couples, right? What would you say is like, I don't know, a message or first step, or what's something that you would see that you'd want people to know or hear?
Um, I think that with all addictions, the I think one of the most challenging, yeah, with all addictions, I would say reaching out to someone who's trained in that area of addiction, if it's gambling, sex addiction, alcoholism, not only trained in addiction, but trained in trauma and family systems.
Mm-hmm.
I think having that wealth of not just addiction, but knowing the trauma, because typically the history of trauma follows a path of acting out. So you weave that thread into, so you're in a family system, understanding the family system and the history, understanding the type of addiction. You have to know about each one in order to help. And then, so I think an experienced therapist is critical. An experienced couples therapist that knows this is critical, because I really like not wasting anybody's time. You know, my time, their time, and it's a long process. So I say, as quick as we can get you there, let's get you there, right?
Mhm. I
So
love that value that you were very straightforward, say it how it is, just get to get straight to it. Because
yeah.
no one wants to sit around and sit in all of this for who knows how long.
Right. And get active. I really push that. That's why at that time when I was seeing you, I had groups and people would be in the groups, the
Mhm.
women's groups, the men's group. And I think the group helped with some of the trauma and the family system and not being alone in it. And the current changes that were happening, along with the 12 steps, along with generally there's some mental illness, depression. You've got to know about that.
Mhm.
And so I really like a team approach, maybe not a community of safety approach, but a team approach, because if you hit all those cylinders at once, or, within the first few months, the person couple is already like engaged in this engine of movement. And
Mhm.
that is the platform for launching into this next new world, because it
Mhm.
will be a new world.
Yeah.
But so yes, that's what I would think. And I have to say, you two are the examples
Mhm.
of doing that. Like, you wanted the straightforward approach, and whenever I said you may want to explore a different meeting, another meeting, yeah, why not? Because I'm a little concerned about this. But you might not have been happy about it, but you're like, all right, we'll do it. And that
Mhm.
willingness to do it was powerful, because I think exponentially it started really changing more quickly than someone who saw maybe others who may not embrace it.
Thank you. Yeah, you were a huge part of the success of us up
Thank you.
until this point.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much. And, I was taught by some great teachers that
Mhm.
I was blessed to have that information to, and to be that, for, that certain that, look, you can take any path you want, but I can tell you, with where you're at, this is the path I'm familiar with that really works. Now, you could take
Mhm.
another path, but generally, most people who have addiction do not recover.
Mhm.
That is statistically true. There's a
Mhm.
huge group. Like, now, relapse is part of recovery, which we know. And that's
Mhm.
why, it's just being open. It's not like, oh my gosh, you relapse. Okay, you relapse. What else more do you need so we can prevent that relapse?
Yeah.
So yes, I was very clear about what needed to be done, and he was open to it, which was good.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you
Great.
for all those suggestions.
You're welcome. My
Yeah.
pleasure.
Rita, thank you for doing this.
Thank you, and I'm so happy you're
Mhm.
doing the podcast. How
Thanks. I felt like it was, it's really an honor for me to have your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, and I appreciate that. Yes, yes, because, it's like, when you've had a lifetime, I feel like, of recovery, personally, and a lifetime of training, not that I wanna do it full time, but I do like the idea of giving whatever I can back in a
Mhm,
way that, you know, that is helpful. So
mhm,
so when you asked me to join you today, I thought, great, great. And maybe this is the way I could offer that information. Well, I don't know. I remember what, just in terms of your voice.
yeah,
This is how far I had to come,
yeah,
raised one of 7, the 3rd, got along
mhm,
with everyone, didn't didn't make waves, right? You're the
mhm,
oldest, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
but I relate to that, yeah.
Yes, yes. So I remember being in this workshop, and there was it happened to be an older man, and I
Mhm,
may have been 32,
mhm,
32, early in my own recovery. And they were saying some aggressive things to me.
mhm,
And I was just quiet. And the therapist said, "Don't you have a voice?" And
mhm,
I said, I just went blank. And I just said, I didn't know what to say. And they
mhm,
said, "What do you want to say?" And so that was the first awareness
mhm,
of being quiet when there was some energy that was bigger than mine, which if there is energy bigger than mine, typically I would be quiet because I'm not into competing with like that. But I'm very aware today with all the work that I've done and having a strong voice that processing, going, grounding myself, listening, holding my truth, listening to the person, and waiting at some point to maybe repeat in a calm way back to that person, "This is what I hear."
mhm,
And then offering, "Let me tell you what my truth is." So
mhm,
it's a whole like dissection without being reactive or suppressed, right? There's a whole
mhm,
process of that. So when I heard you like having a voice, putting this voice together, letting other people, women, men hear you, how powerful.
mhm. Yeah. Yeah, it's a buildup, it's a
Yes,
process until it happens, and it all happens in time. You can't be ready for that step until you've kind of passed that step.
right.
And then once it happens, it's there, you know what
Yes.
it's like. There's not really any coming back from it.
No, no.
Yeah,
Once you know,
once you
then
know what it's
like
like.
the denial is
Yeah,
I mean, you could continue to take that path, but there's always that I need to do something. This is not my truth.
yeah, yeah.
Great.
Alright. Well, thank you so much, Rita. It was so nice to see you and talk, and best of
Yes.
luck until we
Yes.
speak again.
Until we speak again.
Yeah,
Okay. And say hi to Mindy.
I will.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Take care.
Alright, take care.
Bye.